Oh, Matt Walsh. Okay. Today we're going to be talking about Matt Walsh for a little bit. So Matt Walsh is actually reacting to a story I reacted to a while ago. And that story has to do with the fact that the United States Embassy over in Jamaica flew a pride flag. I want to talk about this. So, it's from a month ago, but I only discovered it recently. And thank goodness I did.
Cultural
But in Jamaica and around the world for like Pride Month and these different periods and celebrating LGBTQ plus acceptance, they have put up the pride flag. They'll roll the pride flag up. It'll be up there. And it's basically their statement that they support internationally queer liberation or like queer rights or whatever you want to call it. They're cool with gay people. And it gets different reactions from around the globe. Usually in these countries, the people in question, when it comes to the queer people in question, they're in support of it. They like the representation. They like to see the show of support. When it comes to a lot of local communities in question, they're angry. They're angry because they don't like these Western values, these Western ideas about sexuality to come into their community and destroy the family through a rainbow symbol, apparently. Because they view it as cultural imperialism. They view it, as by this person stating at least, that the United States is coming into a different country that they don't understand, throwing up symbols of gay pride, when gay propaganda will destroy the families of the local nation and it'll crumble around them. That's it. And some locals were not happy about it. Now they cited like it was against the Geneva Convention. But basically the core of the argument was they're spreading evil cultural imperialism by saying treating gay people okay is fine. I already dealt with that in a previous video, but I think I might add this to this. It's not uploaded yet, so I might add the section to this of Matt Walsh talking about it. So he's basically angry about that story. So I want to see where his anger resides with basically a showing of international solidarity with queer folk.
Pretty interesting. The U.S. Embassy in Jamaica is among the many embassies across the world right now that's flying a pride flag. We know even the embassy in Kabul was flying a pride flag, which we can assume at this point has been taken down.
Can I also say, if they're doing it all across the globe, literally even in the most homophobic countries on earth, good. I am constantly pissed at our inconsistent policy of like where we're gonna be like LGBTQ plus friendly and push that and where we're not to. So if that was like a consistent thing across all embassies, good.
Well, they put one up in Jamaica, and some Jamaicans are not happy about that. They say that they don't want the pride flag flying. In fact, they say that it's cultural imperialism. And I think they kind of make a good point. Let's listen to them.
And as you might be able to see in the background, the U.S. Embassy continues to fly the LGBT flag, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender flag, in breach of the Vienna Convention, Articles 31E, Article 20.
This is complete nonsense. This is nonsensical.
And Article 41, right? They are being hostile towards our laws, our culture, and our own democratic system. Instead of flying the Jamaican flag for emancipation, they have decided to fly that flag, and that is an insult to our country.
Again, they're the American embassy. They can fly whatever flag they want, number one. Number two, why would they fly the Jamaican flag? They're the American embassy.
Davies, advocacy officer for the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society, says the flag represents life practices that threatens the Jamaican culture and the teachings of the Bible. She says it also affects the health of the society.
You have to understand.
Okay, it doesn't threaten Jamaican culture. Okay, if it's threatening a bad part of your culture, which I guess if you're saying your culture is homophobic, then that's fine with me. Okay, I think targeted programs against women being illiterate, even if women needing to stay in the home is part of your culture, I think those programs are good. Internationally, too, by international bodies, right? The only argument I think Matt Walsh could make here, outside of just being homophobic, would be just a hardcore nationalist, like, their country, they can do whatever human rights abuses they want, it's perfectly fine, which I'm curious to see what he has to say among those lines.
And what that multicolor flag represents, it represents normalizing perverse sexual behavior.
Also, yes, the Bible was cultural imperialism too. So it's weird to be like using using the product of cultural imperialism to advocate against cultural imperialism.
behaviors and lifestyle choices, behaviors and lifestyles that lead to disease and death. Our Christian duty is to speak the truth in love.
Protesters say they've been peacefully protesting that the flag be taken down since the day it was raised, but are shocked it remains on the flagpole up to Emancipendence Week. Efforts to contact the U.S. consulate and a member of the LGBTQ group on Friday proved futile. However, the protesters say they will continue to stand against the flying of the rainbow-colored flag, describing it as a symbol of disrespect on Jamaican soil.
It's not a symbol of disrespect. It is a symbol to signal support for LGBTQ plus people. Let me give my opinion quick. The first thing, the imposing of standards on another nation, this idea that this is imperialism. Let me just quickly say, the United States is not forcing them to do anything. They are just making their nation's public opinion on the issue of homosexuality and queer issues public. They are making their position public. They're letting everybody know through this flag, like, hey, being gay is okay. It's okay to be gay. They're allowed to do that. They're not saying that the Jamaican nation has to do this about gay people. They're not saying that Jamaican nation has to do this when it comes to gay marriage. They're just saying that that's their opinion, and the United States government is free to have an opinion. If anything, I could make the argument that you saying that the United States is not allowed to fly the flag it pleases at its embassy is its own form of imperialism, because you're imposing your standards on what they should think about sexuality onto the United States and its public messaging on queer issues. That is the first thing. So I'll do the Uno reverse card on that one. That's the first thing. The second thing, when it comes to the United States and this situation, is if this was illegal under the Geneva Convention, please take it up with the international courts. I would love to see it. I would like to see the legalistic argument made as everybody rolls their eyes as you make this argument. The fact that it hasn't so far, to me, makes me think like it's a silly argument. And number two, even if it was illegal, I would just say that's unbelievably silly. And I do not care. Because laws, of course, do not dictate morality. But then when you get to the third point, and this is when the mask slips, the religion gets in there and the homophobia gets in there. The idea of cultural imperialism goes away. The idea of everything else goes away. Legalistic arguments, then they let it slip. It is not about whether the United States has the right to have the statement publicly on the LGBT community. It is not about the Geneva Convention. I don't think any of these people really care that much about it if the Geneva Convention is being upheld in this manner. This is when it slips. Let's listen to it again.
Of the society.
You have to understand what that multicolored flag represents. It represents normalizing perverse sexual behaviors and lifestyle choices, behaviors and lifestyles that lead to disease and death. Our Christian duty is to speak the truth in love.
Okay, so that's when it slips out. It isn't about cultural imperialism. It isn't about any of these things. These are all red herrings. It 100% is about them not liking homosexuality. They says that it causes disease and death. The thing is, that same thing you're talking about, how you need to preach Christian love, that same church you're talking about is the same church that spread disease and love in Africa by telling them not to use contraceptives. So if you're going to make the argument that this practice of love is something that spreads disease or sickness or anything, I would like to see some self-reflection attached to that. Number two, the medications that you can use to deal with the what is traditionally the gay diseases, AIDS or something else, and other things like that, like sexual diseases, has gotten more research and medical funding into it than a lot of other issues. And because of that, a lot of people can actually live with these diseases in a healthy way. They still shouldn't catch them. And many of the same diseases you're talking about, straight people can also catch. And there's even a few that only straight people can catch, and gay people engaging in the intercourse I assume you're suggesting can't catch. I don't think two gay men going at it is going to get vaginal cancer. I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's going to happen. And also the idea that you're supporting love by attacking people for loving who they want is, of course, ridiculous. Of course. Anyway, I don't have much more to say on the matter. This seems like a nothing burger by local people who are pretending they're standing up for Jamaica, but it sounds more like they're standing up for homophobia. Would you support with flying capitalist flags in a socialist country's U.S. embassy? I don't know what you're saying, but if they want to fly whatever flag they want, they're allowed to. I don't really care. Also, can I just say that I'm perfectly fine with the international community making general standards for how human beings should be treated. I am fine with a document proclaiming what human rights every single human being on this planet deserves. I believe every single person on this planet should not be genocided. I believe every single person on this planet should get a fair trial. I believe these things, right? But if they made a counter argument of cultural imperialism, I mean, it would be about as accurate as what they're making here. And so that's why that argument means nothing to me. The cultural imperialism argument when it comes to standards on sexuality or human rights. And so that's why I'm talking about this, because not a lot of people have combated this argument. And you know what? Sometimes people from the countries in questions that I report on watch it. Actually, I would say at a higher on average, more Jamaicans will probably watch the video I'll make on YouTube about this than Americans. So I think it's also important for that reason, because there's going to be a YouTube video that comes from this. That's all it is. It's not trying to piss them
Article
off.
20 specifically.
Okay, okay, you get the idea. Now let's get back to Matt Walsh.
And there's no response to that. The left has no response. All they could do is ignore this kind of thing.
What? I did a whole segment on it like a week ago.
Because if they were to meet that head on and offer a response, the response would be something like, well, this is not your value system, but it should be.
Yes. 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 What do you mean? Yes.
This should be your value system. Because, of course, I mean, we're so...
Yes, homophobia bad, okay? If somebody said my values included murder or racism or any number of terrible, terrible things, I would say, yes, that's a bad value system. Change it. What? Yes.
So used to it by now that maybe we don't stop and reflect on just how crazy this actually is. That U.S. embassies are flying any flag other than the American flag. I don't even care what flag it is.
Why would that be so crazy? You're trying to make it so that that symbolism is somehow horrific or crazy, or this isn't a new thing, okay? They're flying that specifically because they're trying to signal the fact that LGBTQ plus rights are important and that the United States as a country supports it, which, by the way, this is a great freeze frame. The United States has full right to say internationally what human rights they believe human beings deserve, right? We also are able to do that in international bodies, in the United Nations. So the idea that it's cultural imperialism, right? When we've been, as the United States, I guess, engaging in cultural imperialism when it comes to ideas like human rights in the UN and other nations, basically every nation on earth has practiced that to some degree in the United Nations when they advocate what human rights and what human rights shouldn't be done. When it conflicts with other people's cultures, okay, but this would apply to every country, and I wouldn't care, because what matters to me more than just this vague concept of cultural imperialism, because I said lynching gay people bad, is the fundamental basic human rights of every person on this planet. And I do not think a border, an arbitrary fake line that somebody drew on a map, dictates somebody's moral consideration. Borders are real, but they're created by humans. And there's no difference between the little bit of soil between the United States and Mexico. And I'm not going to decide whether I care about that Mexican person just because they're across the border any less than I care about anyone else when it comes to an issue like this. When it comes to queer liberation, internationalism, 100%.
Why are you flying? Why is the American government flying any flag anywhere other than the American flag?
To push an agenda. What do you mean? It's to push the agenda that queer people deserve human respect. It's the same reason if we flew any flag to represent any movement. If we flew a flag that had like a pen in it with a raised fist to support free press around the world, or a microphone to support free speech, I'm perfectly fine with a U.S. embassy, which is supposed to advocate for the United States economic, political, military, and human rights values across the world, what it values, flying flags and symbols that aligns with the United States and what it believes. That's like a big part of what embassies are supposed to do, is communicate to these countries our positions. To be an embassy, there's no problem with them flying the flag. Also, I did not hear the hubbubaloo about this flag. Okay. By the way, can I just say, I think I've seen this flying at embassies before, but this is not at an embassy. At least I don't believe so. So whoever sent me this, give me one at an embassy. Where were we? There we are.
The federal government should be flying no flag except the American flag.
Take down the flag does not equal kill queer people. That's a stretcher. I'm not saying, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is flying the flag is supposed to make a symbol of supporting queer liberation. And when you're talking about Jamaica, yes. Jamaica has a huge homophobia problem. We have a huge homophobia problem. Trans people are still getting murdered at higher rates in the United States. But in Jamaica, there is a very, very, very large homophobia problem. So yes, when it comes to Jamaica, it is life or death, but not taking down the flag isn't a statement of like kill queer people. What I'm saying is having the flag up is a statement that, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Support LGBTQ plus people and their rights to live their own lives.
Should be showing no loyalty to anything but its own country.
I mean, that's what it's doing. It's not pledging loyalty to the queer community, okay? They don't have the soldiers come out and salute the rainbow flag and say like, "And drag queen we trust." That's not a thing that happens, okay? They're using that flag to service the United States and pushing what we want when it comes to our human rights agenda internationally. That's why it was consistent across all embassies, as you've just told me. It is serving U.S. interests.
And then to consider what that flag is.
By the way, if somebody was to ask me why is it U.S. interest, because the majority of Americans want queer people to be treated like decent human beings. Not only at home, but internationally as well.
Flag showing pride in certain sexual orientations? This is what our embassies are doing?
Yes.
A flag to show pride in...
You know, the embassy does a lot of stuff. You know how long it takes to get a flag up there? Just like... done, okay? That doesn't take... It's not like a multi-day effort as they all stand there holding up the flagpole, right? It just sits there.
Homosexuality or transgenderism? No matter how you even feel about that, why is a federal government? Why does a federal government have anything to say about that?
Why does a federal government have anything to say about... Let me make sure I'm not misquoting him. Let me hear that again.
Doing? A flag to show pride in homosexuality or transgenderism? No matter how you even feel about that, why is a federal government? Why does a federal government have anything to say about that?
The same reason we condemn... Why do we condemn a human rights abuse that has nothing to do with us? Why do we condemn what's going on in Xinjiang? Why do we say that the murder of Jamal Khashoggi was bad? Why do we condemn any terrible thing around the world or support any amazing thing around the world? Because we think it's the right thing to do. We think that basic human rights is something that should be valued, and the basic human rights of LGBTQ plus people should be valued internationally. And so this is part of us pushing our human rights agenda. This is just part of the human rights agenda which you don't agree with, which has to do with representation. Dylan is a liberal cuck. True.
At home or especially abroad. It's insane. And then meanwhile, we're flying this flag to promote a value system that many Americans don't share to begin with.
You could say that about anything, right? If we were doing something to promote a value system in apartheid South Africa, you can make the same statement. Well, there's some Americans. I mean, it's the 90s. It hasn't been that long since segregation ended. There's a lot of Americans which still like segregation. Okay, and the majority don't. The majority support LGBTQ plus people. Therefore, the government is representing the majority of Americans in doing this. You're always going to have a few people who are homophobic. You're always going to have a few people who are racist. You can't make those people just vanish. It's the value system that the majority of Americans hold.
But promoting it in countries that certainly don't share it. And
Yes, we're promoting it in countries that don't share it. Just like you should promote a lot of things that are good internationally. Literacy is something you should promote internationally. Even though there's some countries, and some peoples who the idea of women reading might be not a great idea to them. You should promote values which advance human rights and the increasing of the living conditions of human beings. This is one of those.
If they're flying the American flag anywhere that is not a Western country,
I do like this advocacy of cultural imperialism while at the same time condemning other U.S. imperialism. Oh, that's easy. The bomb we dropped here was, woo, gay people cool. The bombs we dropped in Iraq killed people. I think there's a distinct difference.
Anywhere, then they are promoting this value system. They're imposing this value system on people who do not share it and don't want it. So
Couldn't we say this exact same thing about like South Africa? I mean, I just would ask him if he'd held the same opinion about South Africa during apartheid. That should the United States really have told them to do this or this or that with their country? I mean, it's their value system, right? Hell, what about the North Korean government, huh? What about their value system just disagrees with ours?
what are you going to do? Are you going to, someone should go down there and explain to these people, no, you don't, you don't believe in this. This is not your value system, but it should be.
Yes. Ideally, it would be literally people from the community. Ideally, America should support those already in the community to do this. This is just a basic idea of representation. Just on American soil, by the way. It's a U.S. embassy. We can do whatever the hell we want.
We will tell you what your value system should be.
God, this is such basic diplomacy. It's so weird to see people interact with diplomacy. Just this has existed before. This is not a new thing. You've just found out about it.
No, on the left, when they worry about cultural appropriation or cultural imperialism, you hear these kinds of phrases from them. But they're worried about, there was some ridiculous woman, I think some journalist.
Well, the thing is, there can be aspects of culture that are good and aspects of culture that are bad, right? I would like to export, the idea, a part of American culture is, which is being pretty accepting of LGBTQ plus people overall. There's a lot of area we still need to move on, but overall, if you poll most Americans, they would be on the pro side. I do not want to export, for example, our reliance on blue jeans. I don't really feel like I need to export that internationally. You basically have to see what's a positive and what's a negative.
This past week, who was upset on Twitter because a white woman had made a cookbook on how to make dumplings. She had made a dumpling cookbook. And there was some leftist who was upset about this. He said, what is this white woman?
I literally don't care. It sounds stupid.
Making a cookbook about dumplings for. Well, probably she made the dumpling cookbook because she's good at making dumplings and so she had some advice on how to do that. But that is cultural imperialism, according to the left.
Wait, what? No, that would be cultural appropriation. That's whatever.
To make a food item that...
Dude, on one hand, we're talking about people literally getting killed in Jamaica for being queer. On the other hand, you're talking about dumplings, man. These are on two totally different levels.
Arguably originates somewhere aside from the continental United States. That's the kind of appropriation and cultural imperialism they're worried about. Meanwhile, we're overseas flying pride flags.
So? He didn't make a single point. He just said, flew a flag, left hypocrisy, cultural imperialism, and then ended. He never said why it was bad. He just said, tell me why we should do this, and then ended. He just basically threw a bunch of questions out there and then ended his... Oh my God.
Trying to impose this value system.
Okay, why is that bad? Tell me why that's bad. I'd like to hear from Matt Walsh's mouth. Why is it bad?
on people who do not want it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead.
I impose a virtue system all the time, and I'm gonna do it a lot more when I get older. When I have a kid, I'm gonna install the virtue system of brushing your teeth every morning. It's gonna be very aggressive too. It's gonna be terrible, terrible, terrible. God, man, you gotta give a good reason though, man. Like, how is this guy popular? Walsh's argument can be summed up as the question of social attitudes and political arrangements regarding gay people is an inherently political question, and embassies abroad are not a fitting venue for advertising, judging, and contesting domestic political controversies. But the thing is, it's not just a domestic political controversy. Homophobia is an international issue. Definitely, in Jamaica, homophobia most certainly is an issue, as the protests certainly showed. So, we are trying to support our human rights agenda internationally. Jamaica's one place that I'd fly that flag. I'm not saying it's the worst, but okay, I'm not an expert on Jamaica. Right, let's see. Where does Jamaica fall? Let's just go to Wiki to see what we can find. Okay. Go to the bottom. There's always this thing at the bottom. It's very helpful. Okay. Same-sex sexual activity legal. Up to 10 years in prisons with hard labor and fines. Vigilante attacks, torture, and executions are also tolerated. Yeah, no, I don't think this is a place that fly the flag. It does not have an equal age of consent. Anti-discrimination laws in employment. Anti-discrimination laws in provisions of goods and services. Anti-discrimination laws in all other areas. Same-sex marriage. Recognition of same-sex couples. Child adoption by same-sex couples. Joint adoption by same-sex couples. Couples. Blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. Yeah, so, no, I would not fly my flag in Jamaica. So this is why, particularly, I think it should be flown from an American Jamaican embassy.